ahead and introduce them, and you can and I'll talk about this.
Did you all hear that? We're gonna go ahead when I'm ready and introduce. Yeah, okay. So I think we're ready, y'all. And here we are. We're live out at Manchester, and my goodness, it's a beautiful day. After yesterday where it was rainy and gray and just what a Washington spring needs. Man, we're sure glad this low tide is happening and it's beautiful. So I'm gonna pop down to here. Boom! We have lovely Rachel with. What do you have?
So this is an amazing type of crab called a porcelain crab, and this is a nice mature one, showing off that gorgeous blue color. They are not a true crab, and you can tell that because of the really long antenna and the fact that they only have 3 walking legs. You can see their tiny little 4th pair of legs is itty bitty and kind of tucked to the side there. They're called porcelain crabs because they, when they're threatened, can let go their joints. They'll just kind of throw a pincher at you and run the other direction to try to escape. They're filter feeders, so their mouth parts are modified for grabbing plankton from the water, so their mouth actually looks quite a bit like a barnacle's feet that comb through the water to grab the plankton. And this is a crab species that can swim too, so their abdomen on the underside, I'm going to gently try to turn it over to show you. This little abdomen here is nice and wide and can flap through the water to help this
beautiful
kind of swim. So I'll just set it right back in that little puddle.
Awesome.
Right side up. And
I'm also noticing on the side of that rock, it looks like there's some jingles and sponges and bryozoans. Be a fun one to take a peek at.
Yeah, look at all the life under there. We've got lots of little things.
Yeah, various hydroids, sponges, bryozoans, all those kind of cool colonial critters.
If we could shrink you down and show you this, it would look amazing. As it is, it's kind of not that impressive, but they are still cool and important.
Yeah. And we're out at Manchester State Park today. Again, beautiful day. It's a free day, so if you need an excuse to stop doing your yard work, Tom, put your shovels down, get out to the beach. The tide is low, the sun is out.
It's a negative 2-foot tide right now, so 2 vertical feet below average, and that's exposing lots of cool creatures that we can look at. This is a bit of a treacherous beach because of all this rock. And so Sina and myself are going to move slowly through this habitat to try not to crush anything unnecessarily. But we're just looking for creatures. Oh, and I found already a cool thing. There's probably lots more of them around.
Oh,
once you see one, you're kind of in the spot for all of them.
Once you see one, then you see another.
There's a ton of them.
These are the orange sea cucumber, and you can see those 5, well, okay, maybe I need to point the camera in the right direction, sorry. There's the 5 rows of those suction cup tube feet. So we know this is a relative of sea stars, urchins, sand dollars, all in the phylum Echinoderm, meaning spiny skin. Granted, the cucumbers are kind of the jello of that crew, but you know, they're still representing with those squishy little tube feet, so they get included. I do love these ones because they're such a bright orange, and so it's hard to miss them, especially on a kind of scuzzy beach. Looks like Rachel found a friend.
I did. I found another hermit crab, another crab wannabe. That's not a true crab. You can see their nice big long antennas. This one actually has damaged antennas. Normally they're about as long as they can reach all the way to the end of their shell there. But you can see this animal is really well adapted to being able to fit inside these snail shells. They don't make their shells. They have to find them or take them from another hermit crab, or sometimes even they've been known to kill the snails to take their shells. Normally the snail has a pretty great protection against that, though. They have this awesome trap door that can kind of help them. So I'm holding this crab at an angle to get him to kind of stretch out and show you their whole body. You can see their tiny little reduced legs at the back that help them to kind of hold on.
You can see those tiny little legs, folks. Wow.
Itty bitties. And then their abdomen at the back is actually shaped quite a bit like your little pinky finger and is soft and muscular so that they can hold on to and carry that shell around with them. And they'll walk both directions, both forward and backwards and sideways.
And sometimes they do
Navigating.
backflips. Oh,
Yes,
just kidding. They don't do
sometimes
that. If you're wondering what that rumble is in the distance,
There goes the ferry.
here goes the ferry, which means we're about to have some big waves crashing our way. So we'll keep an eye out for those. We'll apologize in advance for the whoosh of water noise, as well as probably this nice little breeze coming in. So, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So, I'm actually going to take a few steps away from the water just so the sound isn't quite so relaxing. But here I found a kelp crab. You don't know that though. So this is a really common type of crab that we see. They often get called spider crabs because of their small body and really long limbs. And this is a female and she's full of eggs. So if you can take a peek right inside there, held in place by this big abdominal flap is, I don't know, 30,000 baby crab eggs. And she'll hold those eggs as they're developing, and once they start to hatch, she'll kind of shake and move that tail flap and launch them into the water where they'll be planktonic. They'll go through a couple different metamorphoses before transforming into a tiny little kelp crab that'll settle to the bottom and grow and grow and grow and get to be about this size after a couple years.
I think one of my favorite times seeing that kind of crab birthing in action was during one of the Summer Sounds concerts, and to the beat of the music, this lady kelp crab was just bouncing around in the touch tank, ejecting little babies, and it was so funny and beautiful and magical. We need to dig out some videos. So
That would be fun. So I can tell that this is a female, not just because she's swollen full of eggs, but also because her pinchers are fairly reduced compared to the males. I like to think of male kelp crabs as being, they're kind of all elbows. Like their arms really stretch out and they're just really, really exaggerated, huge, big pinchers. And then they get a little larger too. So we'll go ahead and put her right back in the kelp beds. This is where she's going to be feeding and also hiding and camouflaging. She blends in really well with the kelp, and I bet she'll very quickly disappear down
And
those rocks.
kind of with that wave action, all this sediment gets kicked up. So you can see we have very low visibility in this water that's right in the near shore, mixed with the tide starting to come in. It's hard to see what critters are lurking below the water just on the edge of this low tide here. So
There's a thing right here. Carefully.
I'll make my way over.
You're not going to want to stand over this
Oh.
very dead crab here.
I'm
Quite stinky.
or downwind.
Yeah, don't. But tucked right up underneath this rock.
All right.
Out of the way so you can get a good view. We've got
Doo-doo-doo.
a beautiful orange mottled sea star, Evisterias trochellii. I think I'm saying that right. If not, just say it with authority. Who's going to challenge me? But this is a beautiful sea star species. They're called mottled stars because often their skin doesn't match their skeleton, and the skeleton kind of sticks through their skin, and then they have these bright orange gills on the surface. And when they pull their gills in, oftentimes they will have a different colored kind of body than their gills. So
Yeah,
they
we've
look
seen
mottled.
mottled stars that come in blue and purple and reddish colors. This traffic cone orange, of course, is one variety we
I think
see.
this color is my favorite. They're so striking.
Truly.
And what's super cool about sea stars is they have some pretty great adaptations for living in this intertidal zone. They've got an eye spot at the end of each arm. So a 5-armed star would have 5 eyes. So each arm can see in whatever direction it's pointing. And scientists have done studies on sea stars and figured out that they actually use visual landmarks to navigate in the nearshore habitat. So
Oh my gosh, y'all. It just winked at you. Okay, just kidding. They don't have eyes like you and I.
They don't
It's more
blink.
like a light and dark sensor.
Yes, they can kind of tell shapes a little bit. But what's also awesome is the way that this animal can move. They move using a bunch of little tiny suction cups called tube feet. We saw them on the cucumber a second ago, but the sea star uses them, and they can suction very strongly onto rocks, which helps keep them in place while there's wave action or while the tides are moving around. But when the water leaves them, they can't move because they use seawater to power those little tube feet. And when they don't have a constant source of seawater around them, they can't really pressurize anything to be able to move those suction cups. So they're kind of stranded until the tide comes back. But luckily, since they don't move very fast, it's pretty unlikely that a sea star can walk on a high tide far enough away from where the low tide will expose them. So in general, you don't need to worry about these animals. You don't need to relocate them unless you think maybe a human has already intervened and moved them to a place on the beach where they wouldn't normally be found. If you are worried about an animal at low tide, you're always welcome to, grab a bucket and pour a little cool water from the shore onto them. I never want to squelch that empathy that people have for wildlife that they think might be in distress. But in general, most of these creatures have evolved to live in this kind of rough neighborhood of the intertidal zone, and they'll do just fine.
Yeah, so really, okay, instead of winking, it's just giving you the most slow motion wave. Cool. Very fun. We have a question about another beach, wondering why it seems like there are tons of sand dollars at Dash Point, but nowhere else in the South Sound.
Oh my word, are there tons of sand dollars everywhere?
Yeah, we can give you some good beach recommendations for more sand dollars.
Yes.
Maple Hollow is one of my favorites for...
There's thousands of them. Kopachuk there. I mean, if they were really worth $1, I'd be real rich, you guys. Harbor Wildlife would be getting an awesomely huge donation from me if they were really worth $1. But, if they were really worth $1, they'd probably be extinct. So I guess I'm glad they're
What do we do with our treasured creatures? What is your...
cool
Ooh.
big creature?
Yeah. Get my shadow out of the way.
Gonna just...
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, what are you? Whose eggs are you eating?
Oh, you're chomping.
You're chomping something. Hopefully it's not
Nom 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 nom.
kelp crab eggs.
It kind of looks.
It very much looks like it. Where have you been, Mr. Crab? This is a big red rock crab.
A delighted red rock, like the happiest red rock crab I've ever seen. Normally we say these are the crabbiest crabs, but this one, like if they had a smile, this one's beaming.
It's got lunch, omelet lunch. But you can always identify red rock crab by their kind of red, brick red kind of color, and these black tipped pinchers. Yeah. It's just about
This one,
whoever's eggs these are. We'll save them.
We'll give them back.
Give them back for lunch. But this one's a male, and I can tell because compared to that female kelp crab that we saw, the abdominal flap is really tall and skinny, and it's not made for holding lots of eggs like these.
And this dude is real scuzzy. So these kelp crabs will molt, or not kelp crabs, sorry, red rock crabs, all crabs will molt that outer shell to grow a new bigger one. And we can tell this guy's been in this one for a while because there's barnacles growing, as well as kind of those black anoxic spots.
Yeah. Spots of bacteria growing on there. There's a couple injury spots as well where the carapace has been punctured. So when this animal's ready to shed and get a brand new shell, it'll actually come out the back here. There's a little seam up the back that they kind of open up, and then they'll pull themselves out, pulling everything from the tips of these big pinchers to these complicated mouth parts, and all of their everything comes out. And then they'll swell up with water, harden over a couple days, and have a nice, beautiful, pristine shell inside there. Yeah. Room to grow.
Room to grow.
All right. So.
Oh, do you hear? I hear an eagle.
Oh, I hear it too.
Do a little peek around.
We saw an eagle earlier that landed on the beach and had a little snack.
Yeah.
Or something.
Looking real fancy in its feathery pantaloons.
So everybody really likes to eat during the low tide. I'm gonna set our crab here. I can hand you back your eggs.
Tom is reminding us of the power of the red rock crab, sharing that they almost lost a thumbnail.
Yeah, you're gonna watch.
Yeah, if we
yourself
look
with
at those,
powerful
look at those pinchers. They are huge, and that shell is just totally jam-packed full of muscle, so they're very strong.
Look, and he's gonna wedge himself down underneath there. I don't know that he's gonna be too interested in
Super
regaining
zoomed.
his lunch. So hopefully he had a good amount of.
I'm kind of we'll stuff it back in.
There you go.
Enjoy.
Hopefully
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Not too,
Golden.
not too disturbed by our thinking about it. You're famous now, Crab.
You're famous.
This beach is a good beach if you're looking for creatures, but you have to go so slowly, so you don't roll your ankle on these rocks. Do you want to go a little? Let's go up.
Yeah, let's go up. Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing to notice how the animals change on the beach. Some intertidal sea creatures are better adapted for life in the higher intertidal zone, whereas others like living closer to the water, so they spend less time exposed on these really extreme negative low tides.
So here's a cool find. This is the shell of a jingle. And so what you might see is on the underside of a rock, this little white shells. They kind of almost look like oysters if the oyster was really flat. And they're related. They're a type of bivalve, which means two-shelled animal. So you can see the two shells here. And this one has this little hole, this little almost like keyhole cut out. That's where the animal itself is going to attach to the rock. And then as it grows, it kind of secretes the shell. The bottom shell conforms to the rock that it's
My
on.
finger behind for some contrast.
There you go.
There
Yeah, it's
we
hard
go.
to see.
Oh, okay, I'm giving it back.
And this is called a green jingle or a false jingle shell. And these two sections, when they come apart, is how they get their name. They're very thin and a little melodious as they jingle.
Love it. Yeah, if you roll a rock and see those attached to the underside, that's a good clue that you're in a lower tide area. They don't survive well on these higher intertidal rocks, so hence just the
You're
shell.
probably not going to believe me that this is an animal, but there is a creature here.
Is there?
This is a chitin. And this one's great because we can actually see
Can actually
the plates
me
of them.
focus
Zoomed
in.
all
Yeah, I
in.
was like, sorry about the wild camera work there, folks. We
So
will
this is
pull it together.
a primitive snail-like animal that has a suction cup foot in the center, surrounded by this fleshy girdle that in this species has this kind of rough bristly texture to it, and then they have 8 plates that can articulate and conform to the rock surface that protects this animal. It helps it avoid predators and really camouflage as their main defense, because if you didn't know what you were looking at, you'd
Yeah.
never know that was an animal.
I'm really digging this little Mastocarpus floof that this little buddy has going on. So yeah, letting algae grow on their shells is another
Perfect
way to blend
in.
right in.
Good adaptation to hanging out in the intertidal zone.
Totally.
But let's go up.
Yeah.
We can find some maybe purple short crabs or
Yeah.
isopods.
I would like some isopod action. I'm also noticing as we get kind of into this higher zone, we're seeing the rockweed or fucus. So it looks like it's drying out, but really it'll be just fine once the tide comes back in and rehydrates this algae. It's a species of brown algae. You can see we have the greens, this nice kind of scuzzy red. I like the leafy reds of the lower intertidal zone personally, but
Here's another cool algae. This right here is called oyster thief or sea cauliflower, which makes me want to try it and eat it and wonder if it's named for the shape of it or if it's named for like the texture or the crunch of it. But it's kind of this hollow, spongy-like algae. And it's called oyster thief because it often will grow on oyster beds, and it sometimes can choke out the flow of water to the oysters. So people who commercially harvest oysters don't really like it all that much. It's still a cool, important part of the food chain.
nice sunny rocks here. Again, looking out.
I can hear things.
Right. Well,
Little snap, crackle, ecological pot of various animals up high in the I found a nice rock that I'm gonna flip, so I think
Uh-oh, somebody said, to your right. I don't know, what was to our right?
see, you guys can see
Everything. Yeah.
even in this. Alright, so I'm gonna kind of lift up this smaller rock. I don't like to flip rocks, I like to lift rocks so that we can see what's underneath without hurting the animals. I'm just gonna carefully lift this.
Woohoo! Hi,
And
friend.
as predicted, we've got a nice purple shore crab here. So purple shore crabs like it where the ground, notice how dry it is. We're not talking about a puddle here. This is an animal that's evolved to live in a little bit higher tidal height. We're a good ways from
Yeah, I'm gonna just do a little pan around. So
the
there's
low.
the low.
So it's going to be a couple hours before this crab is back underwater. And I know that it's a purple shore crab because of those beautiful polka dots on the pincher there and the roughly purple color overall. And there's
So like the
handful of
smooth
them.
legs, there's no little bristles.
no hairs. And they get a little bit bigger than the shore crabs do. And then take a look at this creature right here, also kind of famously living up higher in the tidal heights, able to withstand a long time out of the water. This is called a isopod. So related to the roly-polies or pill bugs or potato bugs or wood louse or whatever you want to call them. Isopods is the scientific term for them. They are super cool creatures, and the first time I ever held one was at this beach. They have these wonderful, amazing little hooks on their feet, and so I held one and let it crawl on my hand, and then it did not come off of my hand, and so I kind of freaked out a little bit because there was this big bug stuck to me.
Which is why I like to put them on my nose.
Yes, she's famous for taking a little selfie with an isopod on her face.
Makes for a great dating profile, let me tell you.
All the people who would be
Yeah.
grossed out by that.
It's
I
really like the adaptation. I mean, and that's having those hooked little toes isn't great just for selfies, but
just
really
for
as
crawling on
an
us.
intertidal animal, when those waves are crashing, the ability to hold yourself in place is really important, especially if you're tasty like this isopod and you don't want to get washed to the lower zones where maybe there's more hungry predators lurking to
Fish
have a
would love
have
to
a chomp
snack
at them.
of that.
So
There's our little purple shore crab again.
yeah, it was a good, good flip.
Yeah. All you need is one good rock.
Yeah.
All right, but then we must remember to put the rock back. And so I can look at this rock and see the underside has no algae, which means this is the side that goes down. The top side's covered in algae. I want to make sure that side goes back up. And then I don't want to smash my little creatures, so I generally will set it back very slowly and kind of deliberately set
Nice.
that rock back in place.
Oh, that was
Perfect, right?
Good
One
find, good
rock.
find.
Here's some cool creatures that I can see.
doo-doo-doo.
This is a closed-toed beach. Do
Yeah.
not come here with flip-flops. You will regret it almost instantly.
Yeah.
You don't want it. All this stuff. And you're gonna slip and fall on this crazy algae. Oop, like I just completed it.
Like,
Did you really?
oh yeah.
But these cool creatures are limpets, another animal that's common to the high intertidal zone. They are also a type of snail relative like the chitons, but instead of 8 plates, they have just one, this kind of domed cone shape snail. And it was recently determined a couple years ago that limpet teeth, or the radula that they use to scrape algae from the rocks, is the hardest natural substance in the world. So it used to be spider silk, which even though it's relatively thin is incredibly strong with really amazing tensile strength, but the teeth, the radula of the limpet is stronger, which is crazy. Oh, and can
And
you
then
see?
I'm seeing these little red velvet mites
Yeah, look at them.
crawling around. So let me focus in on one for you. This is an arachnid that we find intertidally. They are, let's see, there's a bunch of them. Now that I noticed one, it's like, oh, they're little red dots crawling everywhere. Okay, put my finger down so I can point the camera in the right place. I promise there's one crawling underneath that green chunk of seaweed. Okay, come out, little friend. But yeah, that's a cool critter to come across. I'm like, can you count the 8 legs? I can't. Maybe we paused it. But yeah, I'm just noticing those are all over the rocks up here, which makes sense. What'd you find?
I found some evidence of some bigger animals. This is I would guess from a Canada goose, but it could be from an eagle, I suppose. They have kind of the same coloration, similar style feathers.
Cool.
But not uncommon to see feathers up high in the intertidal zone.
Yeah.
Wash.
One other creature, while I was looking at those red velvet mites, there's the high intertidal snails. So these are those checkered periwinkles. And this one, kind of right by my jaggedy fingernail, is really exhibiting that nice checkered pattern. So we have the twirly top snails, we have the cap-shelled snails, and the lovely chitons. So a nice diversity. Almost, yeah.
I found a couple of washed up jellies here.
Whee! Walking and filming. It is really
So
fun.
so slick. So we will.
We also got a good question about if barnacles grow on something, is it a symbiotic relationship versus harmful? So let's talk about this jelly first.
Yeah, let's talk about this because it's right here and it's so cool.
Achoo! Oh, sorry. No, just kidding.
This little blob right here is from an egg yolk jelly. Ooh, and there's a crab molt right there as well. Nice. That's from one of those kelp crabs. Nobody home though, and it's nice and lightweight and kind of almost transparent. So that tells us that the crab molted instead of just died. But back to the jelly, sorry. So these jellies are egg yolk jellies. There's another one right here, and we've seen maybe 10 of them so far today that have washed up. We see them a lot in the summertime because they get pretty big, feasting on all the plankton out there in the water, and then the tide pushes them nice and high. And these rocks are great for noticing how high does the tide actually come. And you can see this perfect line of algae that grows here.
I'm impressed with the big limpets that make their way to these spots.
Yeah, that is a big limper.
Interrupted. It's crying.
He's just sinking down saying, hey, I gotta keep this water in me.
Look at all of these red,
Oh yeah, lots of mites up in here.
party central. And again, more of that rockweed in this higher zone with more red velvet mites.
Nice.
Very cool.
As for the barnacles, they are generally not symbiotic. They don't really have much choice over where they settle. So for these species, they're planktonic in their larval phase, and they kind of just drift around and run into anything that they can. And the first thing they hit, we just filmed Stina falling.
Everything on the beach is slippery.
Yes.
Green is slippery.
It's treacherous. It's very treacherous.
Slippery.
Oh, funny. But for certain species, like the ones that are found on humpback whales, they are not a true parasite, meaning they're not really they're not feasting on the blood supply of the whale or anything like that. They're just using it as a type of what's called foracy, which is just trying to use it for a hitchhiker. Too anchored. Just a couple little crabbies.
Some mussels.
These are green shore crabs compared to the purple ones we saw earlier, because they're not purple. They're not green either, but they have tiny little hairs on their legs.
Excuse me. This is why we hold crabs low to the ground, because they are scuttly and they are going to want to walk right off your hand. And if I was standing up high, that's a big fall for a little crab like this.
But you can see their little bristles on their legs. This tells you this is a Hemigrapsis oregonensis and not the nudus. Hemigrapsis or Hemigrapsis nudus is the purple one. Also on these rocks, we've got some cool anemones.
Oh yeah.
These are aggregating anemones. Oh, look at this one in the sunlight. It's just perfectly posing for us to show off their cool features. These anemones are carnivores. They use stinging cells on their tentacles to capture really whatever they can. So crabs and shrimp, fish sometimes we see in them. I've even seen one eating an entire kelp crab, which was impressive because the kelp crab was twice as large as the anemone and it was kind of sticking half in, half out.
Here's kind of a nice look at when seaweed dies. All the pigment is lost, and so when you find white chunks of seaweed, it looks a lot like plastic. This one kind of reminds me of like cow tongue or something.
Oh yeah, so weird looking.
A little menudo, but kind of cool to see how it's like zombie kelp.
It's zombie kelp. I love that. Hey, Stina.
It's not kelp because it's red algae. Whatever.
This rock is bigger than your head, but it's very thin, and I think your strong muscles can lift it. And I bet you there's just a
But first,
Wait,
this
first look at
algae
this
on
pretty
top
algae.
is gorgeous. I don't remember what it's
Very
called,
pretty.
but I like it.
I like it too. Oh yes, all the crabs. Just the little ones living way up high here. The good territory is a little farther down. Oh, a little baby mussel
Yeah, where when rocks are attached to other rocks, that's not a thing that rocks have adaptations to do. But the mussels have these
Mussels
little
do it.
threads called byssal threads that let them stick to the rock, and then they might stick to other rocks. So when rocks are attached to each other,
They're kind of
that's a
glued
good
together.
clue that you're gonna find a mussel somewhere in that cluster.
Love it. Look at these beautiful snails.
With those little frills. Hence the, although actually,
I don't remember if these
what
are
is it?
frilled.
The lined something.
Oh yeah, the
The
lined.
lined snail.
Yeah.
I have that. The deeper ridge.
Pretty.
I feel like we've been doing a lot of data entry for our beach monitoring stuff, so I like have all these critter names in my head, but clearly maybe not. Maybe, like, it's all
They're all in Latin too, which doesn't help us in remembering what some of them are. Oh, here's another egg yolk jelly wash up. And unfortunately, the jellies don't live long once they've run into something. I always say that their body tissues are about as strong as regular tissue, right? So you imagine a piece of tissue paper floating in the water, how easily it tears. And that's what happens to jellies when they bump into things. There's no shortage of jellies in the world, though, so we're not really worried about them. But look at all these cool sea cauliflower.
doing some paddling. If you want to see happy jellies, either going for a paddle or walking out on a dock and just looking into the water, it's likely that you'll see all sorts of floating
Of happy
jelly critters.
living jellies rather than stranded sad jellies.
Yeah.
Although, can they really be happy or sad if they don't have a brain? These are the
These are
questions.
the questions. These are the wonders we wonder.
Well, this beach is an amazing one in terms of biodiversity because it's got a wide variety of habitats. We have this hard rock where animals can be kind of encrusted and stuck down onto it. Then we go lower, we get into the muck, and there's some eelgrass beds here as well as some rocky cobble. So really lots.
Kind of like the clay banks too that have all sorts of things
So
going.
we talked about chitons earlier, but there's a ton of chitons that are right here. Here's one. Anytime you see a perfectly oval chunk of algae, chances are good that there's a chiton under there. I'm just gonna come pop up here and see there's an actual tide pool with another chiton. This one you can kind of see the little chunks of their shell kind of hanging out. Ooh, you can see this. Limpet is moving. They don't move fast. They are snails after all, but it's giving a little turn there. super cool to see. Thanks to everybody who's commenting and posting your questions. There's another limpet blob, or chitin blob. The more that you like and share and engage with our posts, the more it gets pushed out to an even wider audience. And because our mission is to inspire stewardship of this amazingly beautiful and vibrant body of water, the Salish Sea, the more people that know about it and can ask questions about it, the better.
We want you to connect to these cool places.
Yeah, because why wouldn't you? This place is amazing. Here's another little tide pool here. We can take a peek. That looks like there may be some interesting creatures. We can see the anemones when they have their tentacles out.
Do you see down
trapping.
here?
No, what do you see?
Feather duster.
Oh, there was a feather duster tube worm. There's the tube. Wait, see another one? There's a different species of chitin here. The glare is kind of tricky, but kind of right here is this little woody chitin.
I like to gently touch the anemone's tentacles and notice that it feels sticky, kind of like tape. And that is the harpoon cells of this anemone actually jetting into my finger. Luckily my hands are too tough to feel the sting, but that's the adaptation that animal has to capture food.
And when they're high and dry, when the tide leaves them, they look like this. They kind of close up. They're not quite as pretty. Really,
I love the hot pink.
Yeah,
and that lime green. I think those were my favorite colors as a kid.
So striking.
It's a good combo.
All right. Ooh. Well, this is probably a good spot for us to wrap up our broadcast here, because we have to walk across this treacherous beach in order to get back to the parking lot, and our film quality is going to suffer greatly as we have to slow down and try not to slip and fall on our butts. But thanks to everybody who tuned in today and asked questions and commented and all of that. We love that. Thank you to those of you who donate to our organization. We are a nonprofit group, and so that helps us keep our programs funded and free for as many people as possible.
Yeah, I might throw a shout out if anybody's looking for some volunteer opportunities. We're getting ready to open our visitor center in July, and so having some docents to talk more about the animals that we found here today that will be living in our touch tanks. Not animals collected today, but in the future we'll have
the
all
same
sorts
kind of
cool
species.
Creatures. We have a rat sandbox. We have all sorts of fun educational things to get you plugged in and sharing your love for this place. So if you're interested in that, you can shoot us an email and we'll get you connected. So.
Yep, and info@harborwildwatch.org will come to us, or you can, type in our names as well. But thanks for tuning in with us today. We encourage you to get out, go be curious, go wonder about the amazing world we live in.
Enjoy some low tides.
And get out today before that, I think they're calling it an atmospheric river, is coming back to us this week. We're going to get a lot of fresh water over the next couple days.
Which is good.
Good for our salmon streams and
trout.
good for our forests, but not so fun if you gotta be outside.
All right. Learn, have fun.
Learn, have fun.